Hi everyone, I'm Len Khodorkovsky with the Kroc Institute for Tech Diplomacy, the world's preeminent trusted tech accelerator. We're here in Montana talking about TikTok. Why? Because Montana just banned TikTok statewide, and who better to talk about that than with the Attorney General of the state of Montana, Mr. Austin Knudsen. Welcome to this conversation about this very timely issue.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Len.
So let's start with your background. You grew up on a farm, in a ranch. You know your way around cattle. You worked in a butcher shop through college. How did you find yourself taking on a Chinese tech company?
Not something I ever intended, that's for sure. Fifth generation farm and ranch kid from about as rural area in Montana as probably exists in the lower 48, honestly. My kindergarten class was 6 kids, if that puts it in perspective for you. I definitely have thrown my leg over a horse a day or two in my life and chased a few head of cows and pounded a few fence posts in my day. Just by way of background, I mean, I was a private practice attorney for about a decade. That kind of overlapped with my legislative service. We have a citizen legislature in Montana. So I served from basically 2011 to 2019. Termed out actually at the end of 2018. So a couple sessions as the Speaker of the House, just due to our term limits. I was the Speaker of the House in 2015 and in 17. Got done with that and then went back to my little rural county and actually got elected as the county prosecutor. So prosecuted bad guys for a couple years and really enjoyed that. And that's kind of what got me into the Attorney General role to start. But as we got into the Attorney General's office and started our transition, the office started receiving some complaints about not just TikTok for sure, about a number of the social media companies, and so we started looking into them because we were getting enough complaints. But as we investigated, TikTok really became the one that stuck out. TikTok really was the one that the more layers of that onion we peeled back, the stinkier it got.
Something interesting, this is an issue that the federal government has been tackling with lately, certainly. There was a clean network effort on taking on Chinese and other techno-authoritarian companies that are threatening the rights of Americans and our allies. But of all the states, of all the countries, Montana became the first to implement what we used to call at the State Department as the clean store strategy, which is to ban untrusted technology at the store level, at the mobile app store level. So first, what led you to that strategy, and why do you think Montana became the first state to take this on?
Sure. Well, we really wanted to do something that didn't target consumers. I mean, Montana's not a huge state. We don't have a huge population, but we do have 1.2, 1.3 million and growing. People use TikTok, and we weren't at all interested in going after individual users. That was just a non-starter for us. So the clean store model really became, number one, I think the cleanest way to do it, but number two, the most effective way to do it. And really for us, it became, we were looking for a way to make this legally defensible. We didn't want to just come into the legislature with something that was symbolic and that we knew was going to get struck down, and just us tilting at a windmill, I guess. We really wanted to sit down and craft a piece of legislation that had some legs and would be able to withstand judicial scrutiny. And that's what I think we've done here. So that's why we ended up on the model that we did. There was a lot of research went into it. A lot of man hours went into that legislation, but I'm really proud of it.
So what's so special about Montana? Why do you think of all the places in the world, plenty of people, plenty of governments, plenty of companies understand the danger from untrusted technology, TikTok being associated with a Chinese company and a tool of a Chinese Communist Party. Enough people are aware of this issue. Why do you think Montana was the first state to take this on?
It wasn't something that we were in a race to do, that's for sure. I mean, it was not our intention to be the first. It just kind of ended up working that way. But honestly, Len, I think it was kind of a culmination, a perfect storm maybe of some things. First of all, Montana, we do a tremendous amount of business with Taiwan. And the country of Taiwan and the actions that China has been taking towards Taiwan, that's been very concerning for us. I think us shining more of a light on the social media stuff and what TikTok was doing, harvesting data, privacy violations, I think that certainly is part of it. Honestly, I think probably the biggest reason that our state legislature jumped on it like they did, we had a spy balloon, a Chinese spy balloon, fly over Montana, the entirety of our state, in February. That was right towards the beginning of our legislative session. That fired up a lot of Montanans. That made a lot of Montanans upset. They about melted down my phone lines into my office. I know the legislatures, they got an earful. It made a lot of legislators angry.
So you're saying Montanans actually took this personally, and it's not so much obviously it's a privacy issue. You have privacy issue that's being discussed all the time, but now you had a foreign adversary brazenly floating a surveillance device over Montana, if not for, I believe it was a journalist in Billings.
That's correct, yeah.
Who discovered this weird floating device in the sky. Who knows whether any of us would have even known about it.
And we get really lucky with that. I mean, he's a photojournalist with the Billings Gazette, and he also happened to be an aviation guy. So he sees this thing, he runs inside, grabs his telephoto lens and takes a picture of it, and that's the famous picture that got spread all over social media. Yeah, I mean, I think it really drove home to Montanans, like, wow, this is going on not just around the world, but right here in little old Montana in our backyard. And it kind of got us to thinking, well, why would the Chinese be floating a spy balloon across little old Montana? Well, when you step back and look at it from a strategic standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. We've got several military installations here in Montana. We have one of the nation's nuclear missile bases here in the state. We've got missile silos all over in various locations. Certainly, I think that was part of what was going on. We know that balloon was being steered and piloted. It wasn't just floating along on the westerlies like China would have us believe. So I think they were definitely taking electronic intelligence off of a lot of our sensitive sites. It looks like they maybe even were looking at a lot of our electrical infrastructure. So I think that really is what crystallized this for certainly the legislature and I think a lot of Montanans.
So yeah, when you think about the consequences of collecting data on individuals, whether it's here in Montana or the rest of the United States or anywhere else, there's what a floating balloon can do, and then there's what an app can do. Now, TikTok actually advertises that 150 million Americans use TikTok. Now, they think this is a good defense of why TikTok should not be banned.
Yeah.
But it's also indicative of how many Americans they have hooked on TikTok. Yeah. Talk a little bit about, the importance of protecting Montanans from, of course, theft of their private information, but more than that, allowing a foreign adversary to harvest their data.
Yeah. I think that absolutely is the point here. I mean, the fact that this is data being harvested and given to an enemy foreign government, because that's what we found out. I mean, I talked about the investigation. We were horrified by what we found out, the amount and the type of data that TikTok is harvesting from all users around the country. But I mean, obviously, as the chief law enforcement officer in Montana, this was quite concerning to me. It says right in their user agreement, when you sign up for TikTok and download it onto your phone, I mean, most people, what do? They scroll by that, they check the box, and they hit I agree. Nobody actually reads that stuff. Well, my tech team actually read that stuff and started digging into it. Len, they are collecting a tremendous amount of your personal data off your device, whether it's your phone, your laptop, your tablet. Most people have it on their phone. Well, what do you have on your phone? Let's just think about this day to day. A lot of people are unlocking it with their thumb. Well, now the Chinese Communist Party has your thumbprint. So we know they're collecting biometric data. How many people are unlocking their phone with their facial recognition app? Okay, now you've given the Chinese Communist Party your facial data, facial recognition data. And that's a huge national security issue. That's a huge cybersecurity issue. That's one that legislators across the country are grappling with right now. And you've now turned that data about yourself and potentially other people on your phone. Because what else do you have on your phone? Well, you've got pictures. You've got pictures of your friends. You've got pictures of your family. You've got pictures of your children. You've got videos. TikTok is scanning every picture and every video you have on your phone. Well, what else is TikTok scanning? They are scanning every open application that you have on your phone, regardless of whether TikTok itself is open or not. And it says this again, right in their user agreement, they're scanning every application you have running. Well, what applications might you have running on your phone? Do you have your banking application open? Do you have maybe your hospital personal information application open, some insurance application? I mean, the list is endless here. Okay, so they're gathering all that information from you. What else? They're logging all of your keystrokes. This is a huge one. How many times do you enter a password into maybe a bank account or maybe into an email account, sensitive emails? I mean, you've now given ByteDance and thereby the Chinese Communist Party your password to get into all your sensitive data. This is staggering stuff. This is stuff that a lot of people won't share with family members, neighbors, let alone a foreign enemy power that is an avowed adversary to the United States. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that really got us fired up. This is the stuff that really got me fired up. You can probably tell I get a little passionate here.
So you mentioned something interesting, and I think it's important to make this connection between TikTok and ByteDance. Could you tell our viewers what is the connection between TikTok? What is ByteDance? What is ByteDance's connection to the Chinese government? How does that all work?
Sure. Well, it's a bit of a shell game. You've got a shareholder in TikTok is a company called ByteDance. ByteDance is a Chinese company. That's a company that is based in China. They answer to the Chinese Communist Party, and you can say, well, but that isn't true. Under Chinese law, any Chinese-based company has to cooperate with their government. If their government rolls in there and says, hey, we want all the personal data you have, let alone on Chinese, but if they've got now a server full of American personal information, that company, by Chinese law, is required to turn that data over to the Chinese Communist Party government. And that's the situation we're in here. We know ByteDance has a controlling interest in TikTok. There's been lots of whistleblowers. There's lots of internal communications. We have internal recordings. There's multiple instances of ByteDance weaponizing TikTok to track people, to track whistleblowers, to track down people who are leaking to the media alarming things. And what's ByteDance tried to do? Well, they've tried to shut that down. They've tried to clamp down on those people because we have to remember, this is a communist country. That's what they do. When there's dissent, when there's stuff they don't like out there, they try to shut it down. And that's what we've seen out of ByteDance. So it's incredibly concerning when you've got a company like ByteDance that answers to the Chinese Communist Party, that by a lot of allegations is actually fully controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and that's the company who's behind TikTok.
You mentioned the Chinese law. China has a national intelligence law which compels every Chinese citizen, every company, to surrender proprietary information, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
Whether TikTok CEO says that they won't cooperate with such requests, I would like to see some Chinese employee of TikTok say no to the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing.
Well, I don't think you would like to see it. I mean,
Well,
I think
no,
that person would probably get disappeared.
Well, that's true, and that's what's happened. And you mentioned the intimidation of whistleblowers. There's been intimidation of reporters,
Yeah.
non-Chinese reporters. Now, it's bad enough to intimidate Chinese reporters, but reporters who have tried to learn more about this issue. TikTok claims that, according to American Constitution, First Amendment protects TikTok from being banned here in Montana. It has certain rights, apparently. What is your view of a foreign app that has demonstrably tried to use its technology to limit folks' First Amendment rights, to claim some sort of protection under the First Amendment?
Well, I think at the most it's hypocritical. At the least, it's incredibly ironic. But look, I look at it like this. I don't see how in the world the Chinese Communist Party can claim First Amendment American protections. They're not an American company. Now, and that's an important point in our legislation. In the bill that we passed that's now been signed into law, it says right in it that if TikTok became a wholly owned American company, poof, our law goes away. I mean, it would come back in the state of Montana tomorrow if ByteDance and the Chinese Communist Party divested themselves of TikTok and TikTok became a wholly American-owned company. We would have no problem with that. The issue here really is one of national security. I mean, we really have exposed ourselves and allowed, I think we've allowed ourselves to be exposed. We've allowed this Trojan horse into our country, a Trojan horse that I think pretty demonstrably can be shown to be something designed to undermine our country.
So let's talk about, just take a step back and talk about the importance of trusted technology. You know, we're on the brink here of a technological competition. Technology can either serve humanity or it can be weaponized against us. We're also in the middle of a global competition. You know, it's the United States and our democratic allies in the free world. And you have certainly countries like Russia or China or Iran or North Korea that don't share or respect our values. So there is a greater need for technology to be trusted by people using the technology.
Absolutely.
So tell us, you know, Montana is a kind of state where people want their freedom. It strikes me. And what kind of a role, what do people in Montana expect when they engage with technology on any level?
Montana is an incredibly libertarian state. People in Montana don't like being spied on. They are very protective of their privacy. That's why you see laws like this, and you see the support and the groundswell we've gotten for it. But I mean, your trusted technology question is such a good one. It's such a relevant one. I think it's a lot of education, making sure people know that, hey, maybe that smart TV you got hanging on the wall that came from China, maybe that's not such a great idea. I'll speak for me personally as the Attorney General. I'm in charge of a huge amount of very sensitive information. I'm in charge of the motor vehicle division. I've got people's social security numbers. I've got their driver's license numbers. I've got photographs for facial recognition. I've got a lot of really sensitive data. I'm in charge of a lot of criminal justice information, people's criminal histories, their background, stuff that's normally not available on the open source internet. Our state infrastructure is constantly being attacked by foreign adversaries. And when I say constantly, Len, I mean constantly. We are constantly under hack attack to the tune of thousands of attempts per day from exactly the countries that you mentioned: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. And it's literally just being bombarded. So we've had to, within state government, become much more cognizant and careful about trusted technology.
Some of the arguments made by the mobile app stores are, well, we can't just exclude one company. It's too hard, it's too burdensome.
Nonsense.
Now, I don't see any ISIS apps in the mobile app stores. I don't see any Nazi apps in the mobile app stores. In fact, you know, let's take this one step further. The US government, along with many of our allies, have determined that the Chinese Communist Party is committing genocide against 1 million to 2 million Uyghurs in Xinjiang.
Yeah.
Now, Apple and Google have said we can't exclude TikTok or any other app. Why did you choose to go in the direction of targeting the stores?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we want to make sure it was legally defensible. I mean, again, we weren't interested in bringing a law that we knew was going to be symbolic and us tilting at a windmill and going to get struck down. And going after content is a great way to do that. I mean, it's a great way to get struck down. So we went for the clean store approach because we think it is defensible. I think from a national security point, it's defensible. I think from a patriotism standpoint, I mean, why would American companies be hosting a product in their store that they know to be as pernicious as TikTok is? But I mean, let's go back to your question, and they, you know, Apple and Google saying, well, it's our policy, we don't block anybody, we can't block TikTok. That is utter nonsense. They block apps every single day for political reasons, for human rights reasons. I mean, you said it yourself. There's not an ISIS app. You know, there's no Taliban communications social network app that's available on the Apple Store or on the Google Play Store. And yet here we have TikTok that is owned by a Chinese-controlled company and is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. What's the Chinese Communist Party doing? They're committing human rights violations on a scale we haven't seen possibly in centuries. I think it's money. I think it comes down to money. I think it comes down to political pressure, the financial pressure that China is able to bring on Apple and Google. But to me, this whole argument that they can't do it, we can't block it, is just nonsense. They do it every single day.
Let's end it with this. The ban TikTok law has passed. It's going to be enacted in January of 2024. Where do things stand right now? What are the next steps? What do you expect to happen on the legal front, on the political front? What do you hope, from your perspective, will be the path of this law? And what is the end game?
Yeah, well, as you said, it's going to go into effect January of next year, January of 2024. We're already in litigation. Not unexpected. We fully expected that. That was part of our calculus when we drafted this bill. We knew it was going to get challenged. We knew it was going to get challenged in federal court, not in Montana court, which is why we crafted it the way we did. But look, I mean, really quickly to answer, I think we end up probably at the U.S. Supreme Court. I think there are some really novel, discrete legal issues here that we probably need the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in on. You know, what are the limits of the First Amendment for a foreign enemy actor? Let's have some discussions about what's the public square and what's protected speech, and are social media companies truly a hands-off, purely private interest, or are they kind of a public utility at this point? I mean, there's a lot of really, really interesting issues here that I think we need the federal courts to wade through. So I think that's clearly the avenue. We've already got 2 lawsuits filed. I expect there'll probably be some more. They might get consolidated into one. I think that's very likely, because at the end of the day, I do think the U.S. Supreme Court is going to end up taking a look at this one and hopefully getting us some good case law on this issue.
And it's not really about TikTok per se. It's about, at the Kroc Institute, we say it's about freedom at the end of the day. We understand that technology is at the heart of either benefiting humanity or being weaponized against humanity. And whether it's TikTok or Huawei or some other Russian app or Iranian app, this has to do with safeguarding the rights that we hold dear. And any threat against our way of life needs to be addressed. And today it's TikTok, tomorrow it might be something else, but technology is at the crossroads of democracy these days. So,
absolutely. It plays a bigger and bigger role in all of our lives, whether we know it, every single day. And so we absolutely have to have trusted technology, and this is a huge issue, absolutely.
Well, Mr. Attorney General, thank you very much for joining us for this really timely and critical conversation, and we wish you luck as things go forward with the law. And we'll be tracking it, and we know that folks around the Kroc Institute will be paying close attention, and we wish Montana and the United States the best of luck in safeguarding our freedom.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
You bet. Thanks for coming.